Welcome, and thank you for taking time to join us tonight. My name is Billy Sitton. I'm a principal of Triumph Golf, and with me tonight is Alan Black. He's the Director of Operations for the Harris County Flood Control District. The subject of tonight's webinar is Longwood flood mitigation and the preservation of Longwood Golf Course. Our goal is to provide residents with as many facts as possible in the brief time that we have to try to bring some clarity to this opportunity. Following this presentation, we will provide an email address for anyone who wants to submit questions or has follow-up that they would like to ask. And based on that information, that we're planning on hosting an interactive Q&A on or around December the 15th. This slide references a win-win, and we firmly believe this is an opportunity for both the residents of Longwood and the golf course to win. The slide that's currently on your screen in the first picture is a picture of the door on the starter's hut at Longwood Golf Course. Over the years, we have marked major weather events, major flood events, starting with Allison in 2001 of 10 inches. 2008, we had 16 inches. 2016, 26 inches. Again, in 2016, we had 20 inches, then culminating in Harvey of 31 inches. The question is, how much and how bad is the next event going to be? It's a picture of Longwood Clubhouse. Another way to look at the weather events are, in 2015, we had 34 houses in Longwood flood. In 2016, 63 homes flooded. In 2017, 104 homes flooded. During the same time frame, 18 separate streets flooded. What will the next flood bring? Many homeowners have expressed concern over the potential flood mitigation at Longwood, and their concerns include: Triumph wants to amend the deed restriction in order to sell or develop the golf course for real estate. The flood mitigation project will not significantly impact flooding in the neighborhood. The proposed stormwater detention basin is a mud hole and detrimental to the community. Changes will have a negative impact to property values. Triumph is only in this for the money. Before we address your concerns, and we are going to address your concerns, let me first describe the project. What is Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program? I'd like to turn this over to Alan Black, Director of Operations for the Harris County Flood Control District. Alan?
Thanks, Billy. First, can you hear me all right? Give me a thumbs up, Billy. All right, awesome. Thanks for the opportunity to speak a little tonight. Thanks as well to everyone for joining us, and also a friendly, just across Telge from y'all, neighborly wave from Coles Crossing, where I've lived here for 14 years now. I would like to start with a public service announcement. 2 of those 5 floods that Billy pointed out that flooded the starter shack were not during hurricane season, which officially ended yesterday. And while that's defined as June through November, flooding season is all year round here in Harris County. So please, please buy your flood insurance. Wherever you live in Harris County, you are at risk for some form of flooding. In fact, 68% of those flooded by Harvey lived outside the mapped floodplain. So with that, the proposed project that we're here to talk about tonight is really part of a bigger master plan called the Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program. And that started back in 2010 as a collaborative effort between Flood Control, Harris County, the Greater Houston Builders Association, and the American Council of Engineering Companies. It was an organized way to plan for regional drainage infrastructure. And with our experience, there's been a lot of hydraulic modeling. What we've learned is that a few but larger regional stormwater detention basins function far more efficiently than many smaller individual basins. And so the idea for the Little Cypress Creek watershed was for flood control to develop a master plan for the 52 square mile watershed that has and will continue to see rapid development. To get ahead of that development, because right now the watershed is not prepared for the kind of growth that is expected, we needed to act. So we use what are called impact fees. And these were adopted by Commissioners Court back in the 80s to get that infrastructure in place. So the fee is $4,000 per acre that developers pay, and we use that to acquire right-of-way, relocate utilities, and set the stage for the developers to still do their own work, meaning that we aren't doing it for them, but to do it inside flood control right-of-way. The excavation that we require of developers not only mitigates their own improvements, but also contributes to reducing existing flood risks for others. Now, the original 2018 Master Drainage Plan was focused primarily upstream of Cypress Rose Hill because that's where the development will be occurring, meaning that's where we could require them to excavate in our right-of-way, but at the same time still generate moderate reductions downstream. However, with the passage of the bond election, we're now able to supplement that original plan with projects downstream of Cypress Rose Hill that strictly bring flood damage reduction, meaning developers are not involved. So we're currently updating that master plan to reflect that, as well as the increased rainfall statistics that were recently adopted by NOAA. And we expect to have that updated plan ready next spring. So these efforts, they are all included across multiple bond project IDs that can all be tracked at, here's my shameless plug, at hcfcd.org/little-cypress-creek. Again, that's hcfcd.org/little-cypress-creek. If you go there on the left of that page, you'll see a bunch of different project IDs. Click on them to learn more about what we're up to. Can you go to the next slide, please? So that brings us to the Longwood area, where we are proposing a combination of channel improvements to Little Cypress Creek, which would make it wider and deeper, and additional stormwater detention, which will mitigate the impacts of the channel improvements. So these two elements generally go hand in hand because we're not allowed, nor would we want, to transfer flood risk from one place to another. We have to mitigate it. And these efforts require additional right-of-way so we can sufficiently build the improvements and maintain them into the future. Now, working with the Longwood Golf Club, we've identified approximately 80 acres that would allow flood control to proceed with our proposed project should the community support it. I plan to talk about the specific benefits of the proposed project a little later, but first, I'm going to turn it back over to Billy to discuss what a project like this means for the golf club.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. Where we're at is the combined loss of 82 plus acres, considering both components of the detention and the work done in the creek channel, actually impacts the remaining 18 holes of the golf course. That would result in us having to reroute, reconstruct, reconfigure irrigation, drainage, and cart paths. Our restoration cost right now, and it's a work in process, we're trying to lower them, is $6.5 million. Restoration's cost, or cure, as it's called by the flood control, are based on two factors: actual restoration cost and underlying value of the land. This is a map that, while confusing, is the best example of what we have, showing everything on the same page. If you'll look at on the right-hand side of your screen, the purple and the green area are existing golf holes that will be converted into detention. The blue snaking line through the center of it is the widening of the creek channel from 340 feet to 600 feet. Then we have some modification and some reconstruction of some golf holes that are represented in different colors. All this is a work in process and subject to us being able to move forward. You may ask how this opportunity arose. That this opportunity arose that in April of 2016 that we had some serious damming in the creek channel. and legally we're not allowed to work in the creek channel. So we contacted flood control for support, and they were very supportive. They came out, and while we were on site, that there began some initial conversation about detention. And that we had our first formal meeting directly about detention in June of 2016. Then we'll jump ahead, we'll skip a bunch of meetings while there was a lot of hydraulic studying and stuff going on, but we'll jump ahead until August of 2018. This is when the $2.5 billion flood bond was approved. And then in November of 2019, as we had continued to work and try to figure out how we could do this project, it became apparent that they needed an additional 20 acres to get to maximize their flood mitigation program. That 20 acres comes from the expansion of the creek channel from 340 feet to 600 feet. Unfortunately, this 20 acres consumed, directly or indirectly, they impacted nine of our remaining 18 holes. And the current valuation of the land did not justify the cure cost to restore the 18 holes on the golf course. That brought us to the point that in April of this year, that we met with the Longwood Village Homeowners Association to start to discuss how we could create a win-win scenario, how we could go ahead and get the flood mitigation and the protection of the Longwood neighborhood against flooding while preserving 18 holes of the golf course. We'll move on to your concerns right now, because a lot of your concerns will answer some questions indirectly. First concern, Triumph wants to amend the deed restriction in order to sell or develop the golf course as real estate. Couldn't be further from the truth. Triumph is a golf course owner and operator. We are not a land development company. And more protection or guarantee, I guess, for lack of a better term, until Harris County Flood Control District completes its sub-regional project and changes the flood plan, the majority of Longwood Golf Course is not suitable for development. And as further protection, we've offered two additional things because we want to show our continued support and our continued desire to have a golf course in Longwood. We've offered to escrow any of the money that we get from flood control as cure to restore the golf course. We've offered to escrow it with the HOA in order for them to be assured, or Longwood to be assured, that the golf course will come back. We recently began discussions on offering a first right of refusal to the Longwood HOA, capped at a current valuation. And that valuation is roughly 25% of what the perceived real estate value is right now. Flood mitigation project will not significantly impact flooding in the neighborhood. Alan, I'm going to turn this one back over to you.
Thanks, Billy. So these next two slides that I'll speak from speak to this concern that's been raised by multiple residents. And they question whether or not this proposed project will actually help flooding in the area. Now, there's two components. The first I'm going to talk about is mobility, which is the slide you see here. Now, I mentioned that we're working on improvements throughout the entire watershed. So the improvements that we're working on upstream of Cypress Rosehill, they'll result in some moderate benefits, meaning you'll see a benefit down here when they're all said and done. It's maybe a decade away, but when they're all said and done, it should reduce those water surface elevations on a 100-year event by about 7 inches. I'm going to pause for a second and note that when I talk about 100-year, 24-hour rainfall events, I am using what is called Atlas 14 rainfall. I won't get into a lot of the details on that, but only to say that that means we're using the most up-to-date statistical rainfall data, and that includes Hurricane Harvey. So really what it means is that we're dropping more rain on the system when we model all of these improvements than the current FEMA mapped floodplains represent. So if we add into our proposed improvements, the proposed Longwood Basin and the channel improvements that go along with it, those numbers are pretty astounding. A 6.7 foot reduction at Longwood Trace, and then a 10.9 foot reduction at Kluge. So I'm going to put Kluge into perspective, because that's where we have a gauge, and we can go back and look at what historical water surface elevations were through other events. And so I've noted that here, that in Harvey, that gauge peaked at 137.4 feet. Well, the low spot of the newly constructed Kluge Road is at 130.7. So think about that. If we're able to successfully reduce water surface elevations on a 100-year event by 10 plus feet, then Kluge, which I live here, so I know it as well, Kluge becomes inundated on a fairly regular basis. That should be significantly reduced, if not eliminated. So that is our mobility benefits. But if you go to the next slide, I want to talk as well about the benefits that really hit closer to home, literally. For that same 100-year Atlas 14 event, the proposed project, that is detention basin, expanded detention basin, and channel improvements, would remove the risk of flooding from 300 homes in the Longwood area alone. And if you zoom out to a larger area, that number grows to more than 3,100 homes directly benefiting from this project. So when there's concern about whether or not this project will truly benefit flooding in the area, it definitely will. The numbers just speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thanks again, Alan. Next concern that was voiced by the residents is the proposed stormwater detention basin is a mud hole and detrimental to the community. Well, let me tell you that other detention projects in the area have become an attraction to their community. Harris County Flood Control District, in cooperation with other parties, have worked with their community to develop these in conjunction with the sponsor. And flood control has repeatedly offered 100% cooperation to work with all the parties involved to make the detention at Longwood an attraction. This was the original example that was provided to us just a few months back, that this shows a very rough conceptualization of the Longwood detention. Obviously, as the plans are refined, as we move forward, we'll become, and we shape these things together, it'll become much more attractive. I think something that's really important is looking at an example of detention that can become an attraction. 2.5 miles away on Grant Road, this was done in cooperation with Precinct 3. There's fishing, there's jogging, there's sports. It is a beautiful, beautiful park. Now they had a sponsor, and it was with Precinct 3, but there's no reason in the world that we can't work together at Longwood and get a sponsor and move forward with something that is truly, truly impressive. Changes will have a negative impact on property value. As not to offer our opinions, we look to some experts for this. And frontage premiums tend to be relatively low. Matter of fact, this comes from Dr. Crompton, considered one of the leading sources on this. He's at Texas A&M University. That frontage premiums tend to be relatively low on municipal or public golf courses. Any premium that is derived from being on a golf course are those houses that are directly on a golf course. But what I found really interesting was golf course premiums only impact those homes on a hole, where park premiums impact homes within 6 blocks of the park. According to Global News, value is derived from not having neighbors behind your home, and the grounds behind your houses are nicely manicured green space. When you start to look at detention versus golf frontage, developers often charge a premium for water view lots. Owners love the natural setting. HOAs, MUDs, they have the ability to control the quality of these detention basin parks, unlike the control that they would have on a privately owned golf course. And something that I don't think anybody is confused about, detention basins, such as the one that we're talking about, successfully reduce flooding, which in turn has a beneficial impact on property values. Next concern, Triumph is only in this for the money and does not plan to improve the community. Protecting Longwood neighborhood and protecting Longwood Golf Course are mutually beneficial. They're a true symbiotic opportunity. Longwood community will benefit from the reduction of flooding. I don't think there's any question about that. Triumph is not profiting on this project. We're only trying to restore a viable business. And we're willing to show our guarantee or our commitment to this business by offering long-term contractually guaranteed contracts or agreements to prove our continuation of the golf course, our wish to continue the golf course. Triumph is a golf company. We're not a developer. We own and operate. We are not a management company. We own and operate 7 facilities. Many of our facilities are ranked in their state or acclaimed. Cypress Lakes Golf Course, which many of you know, is 4.5 miles from here, is always consistently voted the best greens in Houston and is always acclaimed for its quality. Since 2016, Longwood has invested $1.47 million in flood repair. This flood repair capital has reduced the golf course improvement capital and hurt the aesthetics and the playability of the golf course. There's no question about it. Longwood has not been profitable since 2016. Matter of fact, we've lost $3 million since then. And as an FYI, because some of you think that we don't care, that Longwood's total golf course expenses are 41% greater than Cypress Lakes Golf Course, which again is considered to be one, in great condition on a day in, day out basis. We have an opportunity, a win-win partnership. People think that for someone to win, someone must lose. How is protecting Longwood neighborhood from future flooding while preserving the centerpiece of the community, Longwood Golf Course, and not only preserving it, but the opportunity to make it commensurate in quality with the development, a bad thing? I don't understand that. Triumph believes that we have a better chance of meeting our financial goals or objectives, actually obligations, with a dry and functioning 18-hole golf course versus a flood risk and a flood prone 27-hole golf course. Longwood gets protection from future flood events, which can only increase the property values. And ask yourself this question. This is a really important question. Less than 7% of Longwood neighborhood utilizes the golf course. Would a greater percent utilize the detention park similar to the previous example on Grant Road? In order to create a win-win situation or a win-win relationship, we need to amend the existing deed restriction. By amending the existing deed restriction, it provides a higher valuation, and that supports the cost of retaining an 18-hole golf course after the project. Assuming that the residents of Longwood are in favor of flood mitigation, the detention creek improvements, while I can't speak for flood control, are most likely going to happen. If you're in favor of flood mitigation, they're probably going to move forward with the flood mitigation. And that could be potentially at the cost of the golf course. We have a unique opportunity to protect the neighborhood and the golf course. We can simultaneously protect both of them. In this situation, we're asking for an amendment to the deed restriction, and Triumph would contribute all the funds for the restoration of the damages into an escrow account. We'd provide a legally binding right of first refusal to guarantee the continuation of the golf course. We'll take private funds to upgrade the clubhouse because the funds that we will get to restore the golf course have nothing to do with the clubhouse. We are willing, Triumph and the Longwood Golf Club are willing to continue to support the Longwood neighborhood in the development, design, and construction of a possible recreation component of the detention area. Triumph is willing to even take it a step further. Triumph is willing to explore getting involved in the maintenance of the detention park. As we already have the personnel and the equipment, we feel like that we can support it in order to keep it commensurate again with the quality of the residents. The end result, Longwood neighborhood's better protected against flooding. Longwood Golf Course not only survives, but improves. It is a true win-win situation for all parties involved. So it's pretty simple. If you're in favor of flood mitigation and preserving the golf course, contact your homeowners association and ask them to move forward. We're available for any questions. We've committed to be very transparent, and we have continued to try to be transparent with anyone that has brought a question or a concern to us. Again, if you have any questions or you have any concerns that you would like to be elaborated on, whether they are for the golf course or they are for flood control, if you will send them to the email that's shown on your screen right now, tsulak@longwoodgc.com, we will see that the flood control related questions are sent to flood control, and we will answer the golf course related questions. Based on the questions and the things that come back to us, we're anticipating hosting an interactive Q&A on or around December the 15th. And we are also looking at hosting some specific smaller meetings to go ahead and address some specific areas of Longwood. We truly believe in this project, and we truly believe that this is a great opportunity for both parties, the neighborhood and for the golf course. With that said, again, contact your HOA and ask them get more details. And if you feel like that's something that we should continue to move forward to investigate, please do so. I want to thank everyone, Alan included, for your participation tonight, and I wish you all a good night, and thank you once again.